Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is looking at clients moving from Simple Fund Desktop to Simple Fund 360. So my name is Damien, so I will be hosting today's webinar. I work in the client success team at BGL. The client success team here looks after the onboarding experience for clients once they have purchased the products, ensuring that every client is supported in their transition to Simple Fund 360 and BGL's other cloud-based products as well. So for today's agenda, a couple of things that we're going to go through. So the first thing is a bit of housekeeping. So this webinar is being recorded. So if you do need to drop out at any time, or if one of your colleagues wasn't able to make it, it will be recorded and a copy of the recording will be sent out to all registered registrations as well. Mainly today, we're going to look at the future of Simple Fund Desktop. So if you've been to some of BGL's webinars over the past 12 months, you will have some of this sort of knowledge. But today, what we're going to be looking at is more focused on the migration process itself. So looking at what do you need to do before migrating funds to Simple Fund 360, what happens during that process, and what to be mindful of post-migration, as well as some training and support resources that you can access as part of the experience as well. Today, I'm joined by Cody as well in the session. So if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions throughout the session as well. All right. So just first looking at the future of Simple Fund Desktop. So the first thing to be aware of is that in February 2021, so BGL did announce to clients that the 2021 SMSF annual return would be the final one for clients. Okay, so it is fully supported. The tax return is also supported as part of that, as part of Simple Fund Desktop for 2021, but it is the last financial year that can be processed in the software. So in order to access that, you do need to be on the latest version and the last version of Simple Fund Desktop, which is 2021.1. So if you have your Simple Fund Desktop software open or available, whether it's now or after the webinar, double check the version of it. If it's 2021.1, you should be able to access the 2021 SMSF annual return. If not, you'll be able to update your software, usually with your IT team as part of that process. So a couple of other things as part of that decision that BGL has made to cease and reach end of life with Simple Fund Desktop. So number of feeds have also ceased. So the bank data through the SIS platform. So for clients that were receiving the bank feeds through SIS on desktop, they have ceased as at 30 June 2021. But if you've been in touch with BGL over the past few months, we may still be receiving those data feeds as part of your transition to Simple Fund 360. Couple of compliance changes that also have happened. So one of them was around the T-bar indexation as well. So that was, BGL made a decision not to include that as part of the Simple Fund Desktop product. There was a number of complex changes that were required to be made, even with Simple Fund 360 as well. And the second main reason as well is with the rollover changes that happened as of the 1st of October 2021. So the rollovers through ESA were also not supported through Simple Fund Desktop as well. For those of you clients that are on Simple Fund Desktop as well, you'd be very familiar with the Australia Post ESA. For Simple Fund 360 clients, so as you start to make this transition across to Simple Fund 360, you will see that BGL has their own Simple Fund 360 ESA as well. And we're going to touch on that a little bit later in the webinar. But the BGL ESA is different from Australia Post, and it does support rollovers, release authorities, and contribution data as well. Since we made the announcement that the 2021 SMSF annual return would be the last one, we have had over 60% of clients that are using the Simple Fund Desktop product move across to Simple Fund 360, which is amazing. So we anticipate that the remaining ones will start to do that after 2021, for example, has been lodged, but can be done at any time as well as part of this process. Perfect. All right. So we're going to break this up into a couple of different sections. So like I said, we're looking at the prerequisites. So what do you need to do before you start a you start the migration process to Simple Fund 360. So I've got a few points on here on the slide. So the first thing is that you do need to be on the latest version of Simple Fund Desktop. Okay, so as I mentioned before, it is the 2021.1 version. So double check that in your software, which means if you are on that version, you will be able to access the 2021 SMSF annual return. A very important point as well is that the fund does need to be at the end of a financial year. Okay, so what that means is that you would normally have create entries processed, the fund audited, the SMSF annual return lodged, and the fund balance forward to the next financial year. Okay, so that's what a fund being at the end of a financial year means. It means those four things. So fully processed, audited, tax return lodged, and balance forward to the next financial year. It's very important that that happens before you can migrate a fund across to Simple Fund 360. Funds can be also at different financial years as well. So many of you might be migrating these funds as at 2020 or 2021. That's perfectly fine. The earliest year that you can process in Simple Fund 360, including create entries and lodging the SMSF annual return through Simple Fund 360, is the 2014 financial year. So still got quite a few number of years there as well. So if you do have some funds that are at 2020, some at 2019, and then most of them at 2021, that's perfectly fine. You can migrate all of those funds across at those financial years, just as long as it's after 2013. The other prerequisite as well is that your Windows operating system does need to be a supported Windows operating system. So for example, Microsoft no longer support Windows 7. So if that is your current Windows operating system, you may want to look at upgrading it to Windows 10 as an example, just to make sure that you are able to access the migration process. Cool. If you aren't on a supported Windows system, or if you would like BGL to assist with the migrations, the client success team here at BGL are more than happy to also assist with that process as well. So that is done also at no charge as well. So if you do wish for BGL to assist with the migration process, what we would require is a fund out file, which you can do on a per fund basis, and access to your Simple Fund 360 license. And we can complete those migrations for you at no additional charge as well. So just touching on the point, for example, with the funds being at the end of financial year. So just to be very clear, so if there has been any partial processing of a fund, you would need to determine whether you're going to finish off that financial year in Simple Fund Desktop first, or if it's going to be done later in 360. So for example, you might have a fund at 2020. That was the last finalized year in Simple Fund Desktop. You've maybe got one or two transactions in the 21 financial year. So those two transactions, for example, wouldn't be migrated across. It does need to be at the end of financial year. But what you might decide is it's only a couple of transactions. So we're just going to migrate the fund at 2020 and then enter those transactions back again in Simple Fund 360. So that's perfectly fine as well. Just if you do need any sort of guidance with this, as well as this part of process, the client success team here at BGL is more than happy to answer questions, any queries that you do have about the process, and assist with that onboarding experience. Now, with the migration process as well, so this is inbuilt into your Simple Fund desktop software. So within your Simple Fund desktop software, in the data in and out tab, there is a migrate funds button. Okay, so what we're going through at the moment is just more high level information about the migration process. But once you have purchased a product and you're in contact with the client success team here at BGL, you will definitely be able to access the migration process as well. So that is automatically available in your software. You don't need to do anything extra to access that as well. When you are migrating funds across to Simple Fund 360, there is a validation check that will also be completed. And any sort of issues that may arise will get picked up as part of that process. So an example of that might be, for example, bank accounts. So if there is a bank account that has a $0 balance, Simple Fund Desktop during the migration process will give you the option to either mark the account inactive in the chart of accounts, or you can also make it inactive in the chart of accounts during that process. So it just helps you get your data cleaned up as part of that process to Simple Fund 360. Another common one as well is with fully disposed of investments. So you can, for example, when you are balancing forward a fund, you will notice that some of these sorts of validation errors do come up as well. So you can do them at the balance forward stage, or you can do it at the migration stage as well. But a lot of these errors can be fixed during that migration process. There are a few that might need to be fixed up in desktop if there's a couple of issues, but most of them can be managed within the migration utility as part of that process. When you do complete the migration of a fund, so all data is migrated across to Simple Fund 360. Okay, so that does include all of the historical transactions and everything as well. So you will have all of that information available on the comparatives on your financial statements as well. So there's no need to worry about losing any of that history. All of that will be retained and migrated across to Simple Fund 360. When you do complete the migration as well, a copy of the fund still remains in Simple Fund Desktop. So during that process, what's happening is we're creating I guess, essentially a backup of the fund in desktop with all of the transactions in there. And that is what is being migrated across to Simple Fund 360. Now, one thing to also note with the chart of accounts in desktop is that it's typically 3 numbers and then followed by / and a further 3 digits as well. Okay, so in Simple Fund 360, it is a 5-digit number in the chart of accounts. And so there will be that bit of a change there, but we have tried to keep as many of the accounts in Simple Fund Desktop the same as Simple Fund 360, so that there is that easy and smooth transition as part of that process as well. Now, with the migration process as well, you can migrate funds on a per fund basis. Okay, so you don't have to migrate all funds at the same time. You might choose to, for example, start with a subscription for 5 funds and migrate some of the more difficult clients or ones that you want to work on straight away. That's perfectly fine. So you can do 1 fund at a time if you like, or you can also migrate multiple funds as part of what we call a batch as well. So especially if you've got, for example, a number of funds, you don't have to worry about migrating all of them on the same day. They can be done at different times, different financial years, just as long as they have been finalized as well. We'll just double check the Q&A and see if there's any questions so far. Yep, so just got a question there about funds being migrated. So yeah, you can definitely migrate them one at a time. There is no requirement to migrate all of them at the same time. Now, during this migration process, so again, the client success team and your client success specialist will go through this process again with you individually as well, and they'll explain and answer any sort of questions that you do have about the process as well. Typically, a fund does take maybe a few minutes, usually maybe up to about 5 to 10 minutes on average for a fund, especially with a number of years of historical transactions, to migrate across to Simple Fund 360. So if you do select multiple funds, that's fine as well. So you can have multiple funds in a batch being migrated across, and each fund will slowly migrate sequentially as well. During that migration process, something else to also note is that you don't have to watch the migration process. You are more than welcome to go into Simple Fund Desktop and do what you need to for other funds, get them ready, maybe balance forward those funds, or do other things as part of your daily routine as well. So you don't have to have that window open for the migration process and watch it. You can do other things in the background as well. Now, once a fund has been migrated to Simple Fund 360, especially the first fund, there's a few things that you will need to check as part of that process. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. The first thing is the ESA. So if you migrate a fund that has the Australia Post ESA, so directly with Australia Post through Simple Fund Desktop, that will come across to Simple Fund 360. Now, as part of that process, that registration will come across. But what you might choose to look at is whether you're going to make that switch to the BGL ESA. Okay, so Currently through Simple Fund 360, it is just the BGL ESA that is supported for rollovers and release authorities. So it is important to make sure that you do review and make that switch over across to the BGL ESA, particularly if a rollover does need to be processed as well. Now, it doesn't need to happen straight away as well. It can happen at any time, but if a rollover does need to happen, definitely important to make that switch. But the other thing to also keep in mind is that even it can be changed at the click of a button in Simple Fund 360 through what we call our SuperStream dashboard. But it is important to make sure that the client has notified their employer of the new ESA if you do make that switch across from Australia Post to the BGL ESA as well. If the funds are not registered with Australia Post through desktop, that's perfectly fine as well. You're more than welcome to register for the BGL ESA once the funds have migrated across to Simple Fund 360. A couple of other things to also note with the ESA as well is that it is free. So you don't have to pay anything extra for the BGL ESA, which supports rollovers, release authorities, and contribution data. But the fund does need to be on Simple Fund 360 in order to register it for the BGL ESA. So it's very important to note that if the fund's on Simple Fund desktop, you won't be able to set that fund up with the BGL ESA. So that fund must be migrated across to Simple Fund 360 in order to utilize the BGL ESA as part of that process. But like I mentioned, it is important to make sure that your client does notify their employer of the new ESA, and that ESA is also reported to the ATO as well, which can be done through your MyGov as well. Something else to also look at is the data feed side of things as well. So the data feeds are optional in Simple Fund 360, but they are definitely beneficial in automating your processes and being able to process a fund much faster. So if you were receiving the bank feeds through SIS on Simple Fund desktop, that obviously has now ceased as of 30 June 2021. But depending on your discussions with your account manager, approximately 6 to 9 months ago, BGL will be continuing to still receive those bank feeds across as part of that process. So once you do make the switch and migrate those funds that did have the bank feeds set up, you won't need to worry about resetting them up and getting new authority forms as long as BGL is continuing to receive them. And your client success specialist will be able to assist with transferring and making sure those data feeds are correctly set up once the funds have migrated across the Simple Fund 360 as well. If you're not looking to use data feeds, that's perfectly fine. Importing data in other ways, there are more faster and efficient ways. So we do have a Smart Docs feature. And what that means is importing bank statements directly by taking a picture of a bank statement, or even importing it from a PDF file as well. So you don't have to worry about manually keying in transactions that you may have been doing in the past in Simple Fund desktop. You can use our Smart Docs feature in Simple Fund 360 to import those transactions directly from a bank statement. If you're used to clients giving you a CSV file also or separately, you're more than welcome to use that CSV and import that into Simple Fund 360 as well. So there are more efficient ways of being able to enter in data into the software and also process SMSFs. So a couple of things to keep in mind there as part of that process, particularly if you are working on some of those funds in desktop and have a bit of processing done, but you're looking to make that switch and move those funds across sooner rather than later. Something else to also look at is the lodging party as well. So in Simple Fund desktop, lodgement is not supported with the ATO. That has been switched off for a few years now, but you're definitely more than welcome and able to prepare the annual return in Simple Fund desktop. Last one obviously being 2021 financial year. But in Simple Fund 360, clients do have the option to lodge the SMSF annual return to the ATO directly through Simple Fund 360 as well. We do have a few other integrations, for example, with Xero as well. So if you're using Xero Tax as an example, the SMSF annual return can be pushed to Xero as well for lodgement. But even if you're not going to be using the lodgement process in Simple Fund 360, you might be using the software and lodging it manually. It is still important to set up the lodging party and authorize BGL like Simple Fund 360 with the ATO. That part is important so that, especially with the rollover side of things, it's important to do this earlier on So even if a rollover does come up, you've done that prerequisite, and you won't have to worry about that checklist item as well. So that process involves, once you have purchased Simple Fund 360, advising the ATO that you do use Simple Fund 360 and providing them with what we call a software ID, which will be available in Simple Fund 360 on a per firm basis as well. Now, I've gone through obviously quite a bit of information about the migration process, just a few things to sort of think about and be mindful of as part of that process. So that's not going to be more of a shock once you start to make that process. It's going to make things a lot more smoother. Everything that I have gone through as well, you will have a client success specialist allocated to you once you do purchase a product, and they are more than equipped and experienced to be able to answer any questions that you do have about the process, and they'll go through all this information again as well. So a couple of resources and things that you can access as part of the transition. We understand that some clients may be a little bit scared, but BGL is here to help with that process as well. So we're here to make sure that every client that is making that switch across to Simple Fund 360 is fully supported as part of that transition. So we have a number of resources available to all clients. The first one is the BGL Learning Channel. Okay, so with the BGL Learning Channel, what this is a series of pre-recorded videos which go through bit by bit the features of Simple Fund 360 and the basic functions as well. So how to, for example, import bank transactions, how to process an SMSF, how does create entries work, all of those sorts of processes that you would be quite familiar with, and some differences as well from Simple Fund Desktop, you can definitely access as part of the learning channel in Simple Fund 360 as well. That learning channel is available in all clients, every client's Simple Fund 360 license. So even if you purchase the software, for example, a few years ago, sorry, there's just a bit of background noise for one moment. Not good. Yeah, so even if you have, for example, a new staff member on board, you can definitely get that staff member to even access the learning channel, and it is a self-paced course as well. The online training webinars that BGL offers are similar to the ones that, if you're quite familiar with BGL's training resources available, this is the one similar to the one with the classroom-based training, but this is done virtually online with an experienced trainer as well, which will go through the software bit by bit in 3 different levels, and with the opportunity to be able to ask questions as well. BGL also runs a number of various webinars as well. So we run best practice webinars as well, so which go through best workflows within the software, how to make the most out of it as part of that process, and also access even past recorded webinars as well. So every webinar is recorded. You can definitely access all past recordings as part of that process in order to become more familiar with Simple Fund 360 as well. So all of those webinars are available on the BGL Learning Channel, which we'll be able to provide as part of that resource and your transition across. So what's next, I guess, from here? So if you can get in touch with your BGL account manager to organize a demo of Simple Fund 360. I'm going to launch a poll now, which will allow you the option to be contacted by your account manager. So if you would like to be contacted by your account manager, please answer the question that is in the poll on your screen at the moment, and we will advise the account managers to get in touch with you as soon as possible to answer any sort of questions that you may have about the migration process, as well as organizing a demo and provide that support to you as well. So as I mentioned earlier as well, so the client success team here at BGL is also more than willing, and we're more than happy to assist with that migration process. We want to make sure that every client is fully supported and have all that training offered to them as well, so that every client is fully supported as part of that transition. So there are a number of people here at BGL that are more than happy to help with that transition across to the product. So that does bring us to the end of the webinar. So I'm just going to leave that poll open there for any further responses if you would like to be contacted by your account manager. As I mentioned, we'll make sure that those clients are contacted as well. So definitely respond to that one if you would like to be contacted. And I'm just going to double check the Q&A as well to see if there's any further questions. It's all looking good so far. So if you would like to hang around and ask a couple of questions, definitely go for it. But otherwise, on behalf of BGL, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. And we look forward to making your transition across to Simple Fund 360 as seamless as possible. Yeah, just got a question here about transactions prior to 2014. So just to confirm with all of the, so when you do migrate a fund, so all transactions that are in Simple Fund Desktop will come across to Simple Fund 360. So if you started processing a fund, for example, in 2007, just as an example, all of the transactions from 2007 until the migration date, for example, 2020 or 2021, all of those transactions for those financial years will come across to Simple Fund 360 as well. So hopefully that answers your question there. There's another couple of questions here as well. So when you are migrating funds across to Simple Fund 360, they can go to one license or they can go to multiple as well. So the choice is up to you. And we're more than happy to go through that process and explain how you can migrate funds to a particular license, especially if you want to have separate partner licenses, for example, as well. Cool. So there's a few other questions that I'm just going to go through as well. So I've got a question here about having Simple Fund 360 set up first before funds can be migrated. So that is correct. So you would need to have a Simple Fund 360 license purchased in order to migrate funds across to there as well. If you are doing it through a Citrix environment there, it should be fine as well, just as long as the Windows operating system is a supported one. So for example, Windows 10, there shouldn't be any issues with that there. Yep, got a good question here from about Simple Fund Desktop as well. So if you have paid for Simple Fund Desktop, BGL does offer a pro rata account credit. So if you do purchase Simple Fund 360, particularly for 50% or more of the funds, you are usually eligible to receive an account credit, so that you're not paying for both Simple Fund Desktop and Simple Fund 360. Your BGL account managers can definitely organize that, and we can go into it in further detail as well. So with some of the resources that I touched on earlier as well, so most of them are free as well. So you don't have to pay anything extra for the resources that I went through before. There is the BGL online training, which is an additional cost, but the other webinars and learning channel resources are definitely free. So the cost of the funds at the moment, so the minimum license for on the professional edition is 5 funds. The current price of a fund on Simple Fund 360 is $110 excluding GST. And that can be, so minimum 5 funds, but that can be upgraded in lots of one fund thereafter as well. So that was a change that we made a couple of years ago as part of the process. So it's no longer in blocks of 5. You can definitely purchase in lots of singles after 5 funds as well. With the data feeds in Simple Fund 360, so there are some charges as well. So if you do wish to have the bank feed set up or the contract note service, so that's looking at the buys and sells with the brokers, or registry data, so looking at receiving quarterly balances from Computershare, Link Market Services, and Boardroom, there is a charge for those. But our wraps and platforms such as Premium, Hub24, BT Panorama, those sorts of wraps and platform providers are free of charge for any funds that are on Simple Fund 360, as well as the BGL ESA as well. So for funds that are on Simple Fund 360, there is no additional charge for those funds. So I've got a question here about the billing side of things. So Simple Fund 360, you can pay for it on a monthly basis or annual. It is the same cost over a 12-month period. So you're more than welcome to set it up on a monthly direct debit, or you can pay upfront on an annual basis as well. So I've got a question here about the professional edition versus the trustee edition and what the difference is. So with the trustee edition, it's the exact same as a professional edition in terms of the features that are offered. The only couple of differences though, is that it is for just one fund. So it's mainly directed at trustees that are looking to manage their own SMSF. So it is for one fund, but both the bank data and share data add-ons are included as part of that service. So the trustee edition is for one fund with both add-ons included. Functionality is the exact same, otherwise as the professional edition. And then in contrast with the professional edition, it is a minimum of 5 funds, directed more at accounting firms that are using Simple Fund, upgrades in lots of one fund, and then extra if you do choose to take up the data feed as well. So we definitely recommend them, but they are optional as well. I've got a couple more questions here at the moment. So the errors that come up, they are quite standard there. So for example, bank accounts that do have a $0 bank account balance or something like that, or missing information that can usually be fixed up within that migration process as well. So it does depend on the fund, but most of them are fairly straightforward and can be done within the utility as well. So with the migration service, there is no charge as well. So if you would like to migrate the funds on your end, that is definitely fine. Obviously, no charge for that as well. But if you would like BGL to assist with the migrating of funds, that's definitely possible as well at no additional charge. Question here about the migration process itself and whether it can be done independently at a client level, and it definitely can be. So if you feel that all the resources that BGL have available are more than sufficient and you're quite familiar with the process, you can do the migration process independently without even BGL's intervention there at all. Question here about a bit of a mix of Windows 7 and Windows 10. Graham, we would need to take a look at that. So depends on the exact sort of situation. Usually when you try to open the migrate funds option in the data in and out tab in Simple Fund desktop, if there is an error message appearing, then unfortunately like that, that you're unable to open the utility, then it may be a problem, but we can definitely take a look at that and get in touch. Or BGL can definitely migrate those funds across for you as well. A couple of final questions just in relation to the cost of the bank feeds. So it is $40 per fund if you do choose to take up the bank feeds. It is a minimum of 5 funds if that service is taken up, but similar to the base funds, you can upgrade in lots of one fund thereafter as well. So that does support a number of the banks, including the big four banks. Just one thing to be mindful of is that a number of the banks will only provide the bank feeds from when the authority has been provided. So when the bank approves it. So to fill that gap, it can be done through the Smart Docs and CSV options. So you can use the Smart Docs and CSV functions to fill the gap, but then an automated data feed would be flowing through live into Simple Fund 360 there. And you can definitely also pick which funds you would like to migrate. So you can pick which funds you would like to set up for the bank feeds as well. So you might choose to have, for example, 20 funds on Simple Fund 360, and then maybe only 10 of them will have the bank feeds. That's definitely fine. You don't have to pay for all 20 funds as well. Question here about the bank feed. So yeah, it's definitely not mandatory. You can choose to just have the fund on Simple Fund 360 and use other functions such as Smart Docs or the CSV importer as well. They're definitely fine. The bank feeds are not mandatory at all. So question here about how long you will have access to the desktop software to complete 2021. So BGL hasn't made a decision on when we will stop offering support. So the support team with support calls for Simple Fund Desktop. So once that decision has been made, we will advise clients of it. But in the meantime, you can access Simple Fund Desktop to process the 2021 financial year for the funds. We haven't made a decision on when that sort of support will be cut off as yet. But keep up to date. We'll make sure that every client is kept up to date and advised once we have made that decision. But in the meantime, the main thing to be mindful of is that 2021 is the last financial year. So a question about migrating approximately 150 funds there. So I would definitely recommend doing it in batches, especially around maybe like 20 funds at a time. You can definitely do it overnight if you like. I wouldn't say probably 150, depending on the size of and the complexity of the funds. If there's more funds, they may all be done overnight. But I'd probably recommend doing it over a few days, maybe in batches of 20, just to make sure that nothing breaks overnight whilst the office, for example, isn't unattended there. Perfect. All right. So I believe that's all the questions that we have been popped through that have now been answered. So just once again, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. A copy of the recording and the slides will be provided to all clients within a couple of days or so. We'll make sure that everyone does receive that email. And we'll also make sure that if you have requested to be contacted by your account manager, that they will get in touch as soon as possible so that we can start that process and discussion to answer any questions and help with that onboarding experience to Simple Fund 360.